Thy way, O God, is in the sanctuary.
An ominous rebrand for the Pentagon, from Department of Defense to Department of War. The White House said the rebrand would send a strong message of deterrence to potential U.S. foes.
Hold the line! Stay with me! Brothers! What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Strengthen on, strengthen on. At my signal, unleash hell.
And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wood was healed. Revelation 13, verse 12.
At my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. I will say this about Greenland. We need Greenland from a national security situation. That Cuba is ready to fall.
Yes.
Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. Colombia is very sick too, run by a sick man.
So there will be an operation by the U.S.
It sounds good to me.
Restoring the name Department of War will sharpen the focus of this department on our national interest and signal to adversaries America's readiness to wage war to secure its interests.
The late great President James Monroe has to be very pleased because his doctrine is back and maybe, if you can believe it, bigger than ever.
We will also deny adversaries' ability to position forces or other threatening capabilities in our hemisphere. Past administrations perpetuated the belief that the Monroe Doctrine had expired. They were wrong.
Meanwhile, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller's wife, Katie Miller, posted a photo on X, needling the northern country, picturing Greenland with an American flag, along with a caption, "Soon."
It would be America that cast its imperial arm over the Western Hemisphere at the dawn of the 20th century.
Let's look at a deeper meaning of Revelation 13. This subject in the present day demands the serious attention of all professing Christians and the world, Old World, New World, and the Monroe Doctrine. We will not leave any stone unturned.
The United States is a land that has been under the special shield of the Omnipotent One. God has done great things for this country, but in the transgression of his law, men have been doing a work originated by the man of sin. Satan is working out his designs to involve the human family in disloyalty.
And President Trump laying out his national security goals in a new memo that puts new focus on the Western Hemisphere. And this comes as some of the president's supporters say he's straying from his America First vision. National correspondent Ultra El-Nashar reports from Washington.
Shy of a year into his second term, President Trump details in this newly released national security memo how he wants to change America's relationships and responsibilities in every region of the globe. The president's top priority is connected to his months of strikes on alleged drug boats.
Very soon we're going to start doing it on land too.
Trump's memo states, after years of neglect, the United States will reassert and enforce the Monroe Doctrine to restore American preeminence in the Western Hemisphere.
If you're focused on America and America first, you start with your own hemisphere where we live.
A big part of this is creating a larger U.S. military presence in the Western Hemisphere, particularly the Navy and Coast Guard, to control sea lanes, to thwart illegal and other unwanted migration, to reduce human and drug trafficking, and to control key transit routes in a crisis. Another tactic? Tariffs. The president says he's prioritizing what he calls commercial diplomacy to boost American commerce while making it harder for non-hemispheric competitors to increase their influence in the region. And the White House says we should make every effort to push out foreign companies that build infrastructure in the region. The Trump administration says all of this is part of their America First strategy, but even some of the president's own supporters argue he's too focused on foreign affairs.
America First should mean America First and only Americans first.
Where the Trump administration wants America to shoulder less responsibility is Europe.
And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Revelation 13 verse 15. At the same time, anarchy is seeking to sweep away all law, not only divine, but human. The centralizing of wealth and power, the vast combinations for the enriching of the few at the expense of the many, the combinations of the poorer classes for the defense of their interests and claims, the spirit of unrest, of riot and bloodshed, the worldwide dissemination of the same teachings that led to the French Revolution, all are tending to involve the whole world in a struggle similar to that which convulsed France.
James Monroe was the 5th President of the United States of America, as the Americans did not want to see the return of the old empires to the Americas for ideological and pragmatic reasons, while Britain was not keen on Spain or any other European rival disrupting its trade with the Americas. Hence, the British Foreign Minister George Canning proposed to the Americans a joint statement opposing any further European intervention into the New World. President Monroe leaned towards accepting the British proposition, but was vigorously opposed by his Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams. Quincy argued against establishing a joint foreign policy with the British on several grounds. Firstly, the memory of the War of 1812 and the British burning the capital of Washington was still fresh. Second, Adams argued that acting in conjunction with the British would undermine American influence in its continental sphere, and that the United States should act on its own to bolster its claim of a regional power. Thus, the Americans decided to act unilaterally, and on December 2, 1823, President Monroe made a speech in Congress, which would later be known as the Monroe Doctrine. Quote, "The American continents, by the free and independent condition which they have assumed and maintain, are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers."
The Monroe Doctrine is an early cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy. It is steeped in ideas of dismantling colonialism and shifting global power dynamics in the 19th century. The United States couldn't afford to take a wait-and-see attitude. Could these new Latin American countries keep Europeans from recolonizing them? In a speech to Congress on December 2, 1823, he made the United States' position clear. Monroe declared the Western Hemisphere closed to future colonization. He also reminded the Europeans that any interference in the Americas would be considered a hostile act against the United States. In effect, this bound the security and economic interests of the United States with that of the new Latin American nations. But what Monroe did not say in his speech was just as important. He did not lay out a plan of action should the Europeans ignore the warning, because when in reality, there wouldn't be much the United States could do. However, the presence of American diplomats throughout Latin America did help forge new alliances. Diplomats built relationships with Latin Americans and provided valuable intelligence back to Washington regarding European ambitions in the region. As it turns out, while both the United States and European nations did eventually interfere in the affairs of independent Latin American nations, it would be America that cast its imperial arm over the Western Hemisphere at the dawn of the 20th century. Though there was one significant difference from Monroe's time, there would be no question the United States could now back up its words with military and commercial might.
At first, the doctrine was more of a defensive statement, but in 1904, President Theodore Roosevelt added the Roosevelt Corollary, which gave the doctrine teeth. The corollary asserted the U.S. had the right to intervene in Latin American countries to stabilize them. This justified numerous U.S. interventions in Latin American affairs and cemented U.S. dominance and aggression in the region. During the Cold War, the doctrine would be revived to combat the Soviet influence in the region, leading to U.S. involvement in various Latin American countries' affairs and even coups.
The New World is the beast from the earth, and the Old World is the beast from the sea. President James Monroe first articulated the doctrine on December 2, 1823, during his 7th annual State of the Union address to Congress, though it was not named after him until 1850. At the time, nearly all Spanish colonies in the Americas had either achieved or were close to independence. Monroe asserted that the New World and the Old World were to remain distinctly separate spheres of influence. Let's read the same thing from the spirit of prophecy. Romanism in the Old World and apostate Protestantism in the New will pursue a similar course toward those who honor all the divine precepts. This is the mystery of iniquity, the devising of satanic agencies, carried into effect by the man of sin. The New World. Revelation 13 verse 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. The Old World. Revelation 13 verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy.
The late great President James Monroe has to be very pleased because his doctrine is back and maybe, if you can believe it, bigger than ever.
We will also deny adversaries' ability to position forces or other threatening capabilities in our hemisphere. Past administrations perpetuated the belief that the Monroe Doctrine had expired. They were wrong. The Monroe Doctrine is in effect, and it is stronger than ever under the Trump corollary. A common sense restoration of our power and prerogatives in this hemisphere, consistent with U.S. interests.
And the Revelator declares, also referring to the papacy, all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life. Revelation 13 verse 8. In both the Old and the New World, papacy will receive homage and the honor paid to the Sunday institution that rests solely upon the authority of the Romish Church. For about 40 years, students of prophecy in the United States have presented this testimony to the world. In the events now taking place is seen a rapid advance toward the fulfillment of the prediction. This power, the last that is to wage war against the church and the law of God, was represented by a beast with lamb-like horns. The beasts preceding it had risen from the sea, but this came up out of the earth, representing the peaceful rise of the nation which it symbolized. The 2 horns like a lamb, Revelation 13 verse 11, well represent the character of our own government, as expressed in its 2 fundamental principles, republicanism and Protestantism. These principles are the secret of our power and prosperity as a nation. Those who first found an asylum on the shores of America rejoiced that they had reached a country free from the arrogant claims of popery and the tyranny of kingly rule. They determined to establish a government upon the broad foundation of civil and religious liberty.
I will say this about Greenland. We need Greenland from a national security situation. And Cuba is ready to fall.
Yes.
Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. Colombia is very sick too, run by a sick man.
So there will be an operation by the U.S.
It sounds good to me.
President Trump seems to be fully leaning into his new Monroe Doctrine approach as he sets his sights on Greenland, Cuba, and Colombia in the wake of a U.S. military operation which ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro at his order. But what does this approach to U.S. foreign relations really mean? Here's everything you need to know. In the gaggle, Trump also took aim at Cuba, claiming that the country was, quote, ready to fall, while Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned the communist government is in a lot of trouble.
Is the Cuban government the Trump administration's next target, Mr. Secretary? Very quickly.
Well, the Cuban government is a huge problem. Yeah, the Cuban government is a huge problem. I think they're in a lot of trouble. Yes, I'm not going to talk to you about what our future steps are going to be and our policies are going to be right now in this regard, but I don't think it's any mystery that we are not big fans of the Cuban regime, who, by the way, are the ones that were propping up Maduro.
But Trump's attention abroad was not just fixated on narco-terrorism, as he shifted his gaze north and vehemently renewed his controversial bid for a U.S. takeover of Greenland.
It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security, and Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
When asked on January 4th if the U.S. military action in Venezuela could signal a similar approach in Greenland, Trump told The Atlantic, "They are going to have to view it themselves. I really don't know."
What nation of the New World was in 1798 rising into power, giving promise of strength and greatness, and attracting the attention of the world? The application of the symbol admits of no question. One nation, and only one, meets the specifications of this prophecy. It points unmistakably to the United States of America. Again and again the thought, almost the exact words, of the sacred writer have been unconsciously employed by the orator and the historian in describing the rise and growth of this nation. The beast was seen coming up out of the earth. And according to the translators, the word here rendered coming up literally signifies to grow or spring up as a plant. And as we have seen, the nation must arise in territory previously unoccupied. A prominent writer, describing the rise of the United States, speaks of the mystery of her coming forth from vacancy, and says, like a silent seed we grew into empire. Townsend, in the New World Compared with the Old, page 462.
So we're continuing to be in close coordination with the interim authorities, and their decisions are going to continue to be dictated by the United States of America.
El gobierno de Venezuela rige en nuestro país. Más nadie. No hay agente externo que gobierne a Venezuela. Es Venezuela.
We obviously have maximum leverage over the interim authorities in Venezuela right now, and the president has made it very clear that this is a country within the United States, the Western Hemisphere, close by the United States, that is no longer going to be sending illegal drugs to the United States of America.
La Venezuela que no se rinde. La Venezuela que está en resistencia activa y la Venezuela, un pueblo noble, un pueblo de paz.
Ahead, a stark warning for Canada after the events in Venezuela. Canada's former ambassador to the UN is warning that U.S. actions in Venezuela and its threats against Greenland are signs of its intention to dominate the Western Hemisphere. Bob Rae says Canada should not assume it is immune. Eric Sorensen looks at the threats and the reaction.
Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state.
He hasn't said it lately, but is it just a matter of time? Threatening to run Venezuela and to take over Greenland conforms with Washington's new national security strategy to restore American preeminence in the Western Hemisphere and to protect our homeland and our access to key geographies throughout the region. By definition, that includes Canada.
This is a declaration of unilateralism such as we have never seen.
Bob Rae, Canada's former UN ambassador, is now speaking bluntly about what he sees as an existential threat from a U.S. government now posting, "This is our hemisphere."
We're basically being told that the Americans will do whatever we can get away with, and who's going to stop us?
In just the last few days, the United States has asserted its preeminence in the hemisphere from South America to the high Arctic. Canada is positioned geopolitically, not just next door, but between the U.S. and Russia, as well as China's presence in the high Arctic. America's strategic interest in Canada and what this country has to offer is inescapable.
We're going to be under Washington's thumb, whether we like it or not.
International affairs expert Fen Hampson sees Canadian resources, oil, minerals, infrastructure being subjected to America's security interests.
It kind of looks like we're on the road to being downgraded from a sovereign neighbor to a U.S. junior resource appendage.
The Protestants of the United States will be foremost in stretching their hands across the Gulf to grasp the hand of spiritualism. They will reach over the abyss to clasp hands with the Roman power. And under the influence of this threefold union, this country will follow in the steps of Rome in trampling on the rights of conscience. Rome and America, that the papacy has long had its eyes on a new world as the place to find a new leverage by which it can regain its old position in the old. It is rapidly getting the upper hand in the United States, with the aid of professed Protestants who, by leading the way into politics over the question of Sunday laws, have fairly dragged the papal hierarchy into the position of the advantage, which it might have taken them much longer to have reached without this help. The German columnist Zeitung warns the Protestants in the United States that Rome is surely getting them into her hands.
I'd rather not comment on that. I haven't read the whole thing. I think, unfortunately, some of parts of it that I have seen make a huge change in what was for many, many years a true alliance between Europe and the United States. The remarks that are made about Europe also in interviews recently, I think are trying to break apart what I think needs to be a very important alliance today and in the future. Trying to break apart what I think needs to be a very important alliance today and in the future. Trying to break apart what I think needs to be a very important alliance today and in the future. So it's a program that President Trump and his advisors put together. He's the President of the United States, has a right to do that. It has a number of things in it that I think, while perhaps many people in the United States would be in agreement, I think many others would see things in a different way.
In the Codifying Freedom, the Supreme Court, the USA is showing the 10 Commandments with bended knee covering the first table of the law, especially the fourth commandment. We will see the execution of that behavior during the Sunday law and the application of the Noahide laws in America. By the decree enforcing the institution of the papacy in violation of the law of God, our nation will disconnect herself fully from righteousness. When Protestantism shall stretch her hand across the gulf to grasp the hand of the Roman power, when she shall reach over the abyss to clasp hands with spiritualism, when, under the influence of this threefold union, our country shall repudiate every principle of its constitution as a Protestant and Republican government, and shall make provision for the propagation of papal falsehoods and delusions, then we may know that the time has come for the marvelous working of Satan, and that the end is near.
President. So we are seeing, regarding Iran, we are seeing the protests in Iran these days. The citizens are begging for help from the U.S. and Israel, naming streets in the city after President Trump. It seems there is an opportunity here that may not come again. Will the United States stand by the citizens of Iran? And if Israel decides to strike again the nuclear sites in Iran, is the U.S. expected to take part?
Well, look, we certainly stand by anybody who's engaged in peaceful protests, anybody who's trying to exert their rights for free association and to have their voices heard. Obviously, the Iranian regime has a lot of problems. And as the President of the United States has said, the smartest thing for them to have done, it was true 2 months ago, it's true today, is for them to actually have a real negotiation with the United States about what we need to see when it comes to their nuclear program. I'll let the President speak to what we're going to do in the future, but we certainly stand with anybody across the world, including the Iranian people who are advocating for their rights.
This is why Iran and Russia are connected with the Eastern question, tidings out of the North and East. Also notice that it says tidings plural, to include the Crimean War, the Russo-Turkish War, and the events of today. Tidings out of the East, Iran, and out of the North, Russia, shall trouble him. Daniel 11, the Eastern question. Daniel 11 verse 44. But tidings out of the East and out of the North shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy, and utterly to make away many. We are here brought to Crimean War of 1853 to 1856. The powers involved were the Persians on the east and the Russians on the north, which troubled the Ottoman government. The Persians on the east and the Russians on the north were the ones which instigated that conflict. Tidings from these powers troubled him, Turkey. Their attitude and movements incited the Sultan to anger and revenge.
The president announced that he is hiking the Pentagon budget from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. Just announced that. Why? Well, it's hard to know without asking him. He'll explain. But big picture, obviously, that's the kind of budget that a country that anticipates a global or regional war has for its military. There's no other reason to do that. That's not a peacekeeping budget. That's a war budget, a big war budget. So I think it's fair to expect, and all the signs suggest, that we're going to have a big war soon. A big war soon. I think everyone expects that to happen. Hope it doesn't happen, but obviously we're moving in that direction, toward a world war.
Hi, Paris. You're starting with Donald Trump's calling for the U.S. defense budget to increase by 50% next year.
The U.S. president made the announcement on Wednesday on social media. He wants to increase defense spending to $1.5 trillion in 2027, saying he wants to build a, quote, dream military, and pointing to the unstable geopolitical landscape as motivation. The spending allocated in this year's budget is at $901 billion and basically was at that level over the $900 billion mark for the previous 4 years, as you can see on that graph. This has led to major U.S. defense stocks like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Raytheon rising in extended trading in New York after the announcement. But Trump did set conditions on these groups in a separate post, vowing to force these companies to speed up arms deliveries and to build new manufacturing plants by cracking down on payouts to shareholders and executives. He singled out Raytheon for criticism, saying, quote, either Raytheon steps up and starts investing in more upfront investment like plants and equipment, or they will no longer be doing business with the Department of War.
World War III. Soon the four winds of heaven will be loosed, and in every part of the globe there will be dissension, strife, war, bloodshed. Satan is stirred with intensity from beneath. The power of God will be the defense of his people until their warning message will have been proclaimed to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Clearly, it's no secret that our country is in chaos. The world is in chaos. What happened with Yemen and the missile strikes the last few days, Ukraine, Palestine. We don't even know where the Secretary of Defense is right now. Are we on the brink of World War III?
I think we're the closest that we've ever been. And, you know, Joe, this won't be a regular war. This is not going to be, as I say, army tanks running back and forth, shooting each other. These are weapons of mass destruction, the likes of which nobody's ever seen. I've seen them. And this is obliteration. This is not a world war like we are used to.
Armageddon is a literal battle, and deadly instruments of warfare will be invented. For mighty angels hold back the powers of this earth till the servants of God are sealed in their foreheads. The nations of the world are eager for conflict, but they are held in check by the angels. When this restraining power is removed, there will come a time of trouble and anguish. Deadly instruments of warfare will be invented. Vessels with their living cargo will be entombed in the great deep. All who have not the spirit of truth will unite under the leadership of satanic agencies, but they are to be kept under control till the time shall come for the great battle of Armageddon. 7 BC 967, 1900.
The gospel brings about the end. Matthew 24, verse 14. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Christ our righteousness brings the new world. Every soul controlled by the Holy Spirit saw in their brethren and sisters the faces of angels. One interest prevailed, one subject of emulation swallowed up all others, to be like Christ, to do the works of Christ.
The night is dark, but the sun of righteousness is shining upon them. Their hearts leap for joy. They seem to be in a new world. Christ is a living Savior.
Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share. God bless.